Yes, that's a feeling that comes with it. For sure. I'm very grateful though. It's mixed with a lot of gratitude, but it is definitely very intense, but it's unbelievable really that I get to travel so much and meet so many people. So I'm very grateful, and I try to just think about it one day at a time because it always ends up being fine.
How do you prepare for that? I mean, how do you prepare specifically for being away from home for so long?
I feel like the art of making the right luggage is a huge
Mhm.
part of it, making
Oh
sure
God,
that,
I can get into this. I want to talk about
yeah,
this.
luggage making. I feel like I'm becoming an expert one tour at a time. Um, I realized that I guess before I had this idea of who I would be if I traveled, as much. So there was those pretty outfits, those nice shoes, etc. But that's not the reality. The reality is I want to be wearing sweatpants and hoodies with running shoes every day that I'm not on tour, that I'm not on stage, and then just having comfortable clothes for the stage. So I canceled all this kind of illusion of me being in those fancy clothes for traveling. It's not true. I just need to be comfortable because comfort is the key. And uh, nothing but black because it fits everywhere. And the quicker I get to get dressed and have things match, the easier it is in the morning, really. Also, if I drop some coffee or something, it won't show as much. So, there's no white t-shirts involved in the situation for sure.
That's such a funny thing about life in general is I think that we don't think about how many of these decisions are just completely pragmatic,
It
are just
really is.
results of these day to day. And it sounds like, I mean, obviously you're discussing this kind of off stage, but it sounds like also to a certain extent, especially when it's a really long tour, you have to, what you do on stage is also kind of a result of the fact that you're on tour for a long amount of time.
Absolutely. And resting as much as possible everywhere, every time you can. I nap anywhere now. I can sit and sleep. So I think acknowledging that sleep will not be your nice habit and schedule, always going to bed at 9 and waking up at 7. It's not possible. So whatever sleep you can get at any moment, you pile it on, and napping is definitely the key to making it through for sure.
I'm amazed that people's voices can hold for so long. I have this issue. If I speak for too long, my voice will go out. The fact that you can tour and sing and I'm sure get sick from time to time, but still perform is incredible to me.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible what the body will do with adrenaline as well. So there's two things. For sure, I can be I love people, but I'm definitely an introvert. So I always end up spending a lot of time alone on tour. So I'll be with the band traveling all this, but I'll kind of be in my bubble very often. My noise cancel AirPods are saving my life in so many cases. So I don't speak that much outside of the stage and maybe going for dinner with them. But when they go out, I go to my room always. I don't drink. So I'm only drinking water, tea, and matcha. So I think those little things, the sleep aspect and the resting the voice as much as possible. And so my only thing will be, some things that might not help as much as like cigarettes, but there's no drinking involved, there's nothing else. And that is a big part, I think, of what so far, knock on wood, has allowed me to tour so much and still be able to sing and talk to people and have a voice.
You allude to adrenaline, and I'm curious. I also consider myself an introvert, but also obviously, I talk to strangers for a living.
Mm.
Do you feel like side of thing that side of things has impacted your ability to get up on stage and just perform in front of a bunch of strangers?
Being an introvert, it was definitely a journey because when I started music, well, it kind of started out of nowhere in a way. I wasn't really planning to have a career. I didn't even think it was possible. So it was really out of pure joy and fun and it was definitely a big part of my healing process as well, because I was basically in another field completely. And then I burnt out and I started making music as a healing process. It was part of my therapeutic process. And I thought at first that I would only make music if ever I would get paid for it. It would be for TV or movies or just making albums, but I never thought I would be on stage. And then when I realized that things were kind of leading towards that, and I had also decided that I wanted to say yes to life, to just follow whatever it threw at me and trust the process, because I was lost enough that I felt like I had nothing to lose. And the thing that shifted for me was my very first shows. I was very nervous, very uncomfortable. I used to do what I always saw. So what I saw was you're on stage, you speak, you do a song, you speak, people applause. And that made me uncomfortable. So when I started thinking about, okay, what is my ideal show? I made music without learning it from anywhere and just doing what felt right and what brought me joy. And I realized I hadn't done that thought process for the stage. And when I started thinking about it, I realized I don't want my show to be cut by applause constantly. I want to be able to be in a place where I can practically imagine that I'm on my couch at home and you guys are invited in that comfortable space. I want to be comfortable. So the things that helped me be comfortable was canceling applause altogether, informing people at the beginning of the show, we are entering a bubble. There will be no room for applause, but instead I invite you to sink into your seat and really let the music just go through you, as it's a magical thing, really, when you think about it. The frequencies going through all of us at once and emotions inside each of us, but together at the same time. That feels like an experience I would like you to sink in properly and to not get out of the bubble because of applause. So I also worked with the musicians to make the whole show continuous. So there were very few moments where we would actually stop the music. And that made me so comfortable. I felt like I got in a trance when I started the show, and I could stay in it all the way until the end. And it's as if you wake up at the end of the show and it's done. And then people applause and, congratulate you, which I also find very strange because the concept of applause altogether is quite strange. And I even researched it and realized it was a way to vote in ancient Greece. I was like, this has nothing to do with my show. So that's the joke I made at the start of the show. There's no room for applause because even when you look at it, it's a strange thing and I don't understand. So I'm going to just cancel the concept, and perhaps we can even think about other things in our life that might not make sense anymore and cancel them altogether. So that allowed me to connect even more with people, funny enough, for them to get in the same mental space I was in, that is more of a meditative space where we're together, just quiet and feeling the music together without interruption, allowed me to feel more connected to them and to the music than if I was in constant interaction, talking through the show and people applauding and this back and forth that happens
The applause were taking you out of the moment?
completely. They were throwing me off. They were making me uncomfortable. I kept thinking, I don't applaud the woman who serves me my food at the restaurant. I don't applaud, the woman I'm paying at the grocery store. So why am I getting constant validation for my job when my goal is not to receive your approval? My job is to offer you what the message that I'm trying to share and that moment that I want us to feel. So it's not about, for me, it's about giving. So whether you like it or not, that is going to be up to you at the end of it all, but I don't need to know throughout the process. And I know that it was a bit destabilizing at first for some of the musicians who were very candid at saying, well, how are we going to know if they like the song? How are we going to know if they like the show? It's like, we won't. We'll just have to do our best, and we need to like it and to be authentic in it. And then whatever comes, comes. And also, I kept saying, I don't want one of the songs to be jealous of the other. Every song matters. It's a whole concept. I love them all like my babies. So we're going to give them all the same equal treatment to just be played and be part of one piece rather than them feeling separate. Because I really see it as a play or a movie. You don't stop at every act. You don't stop at every scene to applaud the scene. Let's live it as one single unit rather than separate songs that each have their own world, you know?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm trying to put myself in that position, and I feel like that would be a difficult ask for me at first because obviously you're grateful that that's people's instinct, right? You're grateful that
Mm,
people do want to applaud you and that they do appreciate what you're doing.
for sure. I'm extremely grateful that people are connecting with the music and sharing their appreciation. But I also feel like it's not the goal. The first goal is not for me to be validated or for the music to be validated. It's for it to exist in its authentic form and to reach whoever it connects with. And also, I feel like there's different ways to show your appreciation, for you to embark in your journey and actually close your eyes and get in the bubble with me. It means 10 times more than applause because you did the thing that felt good for you and that would amplify the music and amplify your experience rather than the thing that is letting me know that you're appreciating it. So when I put those two in the balance, I much rather know that you're actually allowing yourself that time where you can just be there and rest and welcome the music and let it bring whatever emotions are meant to appear. And I noticed too that when I started doing that, people would come after the show. That's another moment I'm very grateful for it. I always feel also a bit uncomfortable because praise is a strange thing when I don't even feel like it's really me completely doing it. It's such a team effort and music seems to just appear in my head in a way that I feel like, why am I getting when you congratulate me, it's not like I worked really hard for the music. It just came and it was fun to do. So I feel like the messenger in a way, or just the vessel that it came out of. But the people told me from the moment I stopped the applause, some people came to tell me that they really went in the bubble and that it made them cry. And that's the only time where I'm happy to make people cry. It's definitely at a show because I know it was out of having a moment where it did sink in a place that hit their emotion and that resonated with something that lives within them. Therefore, that means we really connected from soul to soul. Our emotions, our frequencies were in sync, and that brought out of you the emotions that I went through when these songs appeared and when I sing them too. So that is a magical thing about music that I definitely feel like when it comes to me and my performances, I will always try to do everything in my power to make them um, as true in frequency as possible. And if part of it is to cancel applause, cancel they shall be.
It sounds like to a certain extent too that you are able to gauge how the audience is reacting even without the artifice of applause, right? I mean, you can see that they are into it. You can see that they're kind of vibing along with the music.
Yeah, you can feel it. More than see, it's just a feeling. And I guess just the quietness of it all is the loudest applause. Their presence is the loudest applause, and them actually being quiet throughout the show lets me know that they're welcoming it and they're present for the music, and that's just the art of active listening is a beautiful gift to get from an audience.
You mentioned this idea before of saying yes to life, and I'm curious of how intentional that had to be, and at what point, at what point you really came into that idea, and at what point that really sort of, I guess, shaped your approach to things.
That was a big lesson. That was one of those that really changed my life. So I always felt somewhat connected. I see signs everywhere, whether it's in my head or not, nobody knows, but it works for me. So I decided to believe. And
Do you see the universe just sort of dropping hints?
Yeah, all the time. I have
Mhm.
a friend who calls them God winks, and to me, whether you say God or the universe or life, we're talking about the same thing in different languages, really. And I, so I came from, my music career started after burnout, but basically that burnout happened because I was working in psychological support for employees and with autistic children, children on the spectrum, sorry. And I realized that I always had this dream of contributing to other people's well-being. And I come from a family where healing is very important. So my mom's a doctor, and I always felt like she was treating the body, but I wanted to treat the mind because it felt more important and powerful than the physical body. And
Mm.
I felt like that's what I was going towards. And when I burnt out, it left me so confused because I knew that I loved what I did, but I also realized that when I did it in that format, I would wear myself out and end up, I was rendered useless, really. So from that moment, I felt so lost that there was a letting go. And my mom reminded me, don't forget to ask. Talk to yourself, but when you're talking to yourself, you're talking to God, you're talking to universe. Ask for signs, follow what feels right, follow your instinct, and don't deviate from that. So if you're somewhere that you don't feel well, you have to leave, even if it doesn't make sense, because it made sense to be in a nice job, in a nice office. Like all my friends, we were in the same boat of 9 to 5 and doing the thing. And I didn't feel comfortable. So the burnout kind of forced me out of it. And from that moment, it's as if I had so little energy to think or to try to make a plan that there was that release of, okay, I'm not in control of anything. I tried to be and I failed. So I surrender. I will do whatever brings me joy or allows me to stay here in a somewhat healthy mental space. And that will be the first priority. Being alive and well, priority one. So my new definition of success was very basic. And after that, music was that thing that made me feel so good. There was nothing else like it. There was just finally, I feel good. Finally, something brings me joy, makes me feel alive, it's hard to explain, but there's something that feels so good when you get lost in music for hours. And I had 2 years to heal because my job paid me for 2 years at my salary as I was in the process of therapy. And that was the most beautiful gift life gave me. And it's weird to say now that this burnout was the most beautiful gift life also gave me, but it really was because it was a turning point where I went from trying to control and imitate what I saw around and fit in the world in the format of a square when really I don't belong and I don't fit in that kind of life. And just letting life lead me from that moment on, it took away a lot of mental energy because suddenly I realized I don't even need to think really. I just need to be in contact with my intuition and to pay attention to the signs, the opportunities that are brought to me, never deviate from that. So I had people come to me and suggesting to make music or to manage me, and they were trying to sell me the moon. We can do this and that. We'll make you rich. It was like, but that's not what I want. I want someone who's going to tell me we're going to be happy and authentic. And that's exactly what life brought me. I remember I launched my EP and I literally told, okay, universe, I did everything I could. It brought me here. I don't know that I can do this alone because it's a lot of work and I don't want to deal with numbers. I can't. I just want to make art. So if you could bring me someone to help me out, it would be amazing. If you don't, I'm going to keep making music. I'm going to keep working at the cafe and I will be a very happy person. And that very night, my today's manager came to the show and said, I've been following your path a little, looking at what you're doing, and I would like to start a label and manage you. I don't know anything about music. I will probably not be able to make you any money, but I can promise you to give you tools that will give you more room to create freely and to have better studios and better things. And you will probably have to keep your day job, but the rest of the time that you're making music, I will take care of managing all this for you. And I was like, that's what I needed to hear. I needed someone who had the same values and the same vision of let's make art. It was like, maybe your art will be heard in 50 years when you're gone, but I promise you that it will be yours and it will be authentic. And I will never try to step in or try to stir you in a direction towards being more with the industry or anything like that. I want to protect art. So I was like, where do I sign? Right away. And then 10 years later, we're still here and we're still thriving and we still have the same values and the same vision that unites us all. And I'm very grateful for that.
More than anything, it sounds like it was really kind of the 9 to 5 office aspect of things that really led to your burnout.
It was, but I realized later that it was also because I thought my place was to help contribute to the healing of brains. But in reality, I think my place is more in trying to address the healing of the soul, and they can be confused for one another. I think all matters, mind, body, soul for sure. But there is something specific about the soul and the emotions that come from a different place than just the chemicals of the brain. And that's what music can do. It has this magical aspect. I never know, this energetic aspect that just hits in a different place, but also addresses the brain and the chemistry of the body. So it covers it all. And it's obviously way easier to encourage people to come to a music concert than to a group therapy. So that also, helps.
I've read quite a bit about spectrum disorder. In fact, like I'm fairly certain that like I'm on the spectrum to a certain extent, and I think it's been very eye opening to look into it and to realize how people communicate differently, and then to realize how I communicate differently, how that's impacted my relationship with people, and how it's impacted how I've gone through the world. And I have to imagine that experience, although difficult, um, it really, really made a lasting impact on you, communicating, especially with these children who it sounds like were probably at that point in their lives struggling to communicate.
Definitely. That's also part of what allowed me to realize, well, with the help of my therapist, that I also belonged on on the spectrum to a certain extent, and that's why I felt so good around them. Because every time I left the sessions, I kept telling other intervenants, I don't know how you say it in English, other people who worked with them as well. Um, to me, the situations I was dealing with, it was not the kids, it was the parents. I felt like the biggest challenge was the parents because they didn't understand and they kept asking questions like, what did I do wrong? Why is my child like this? I was like, it's a gift. It's a beautiful thing. Everyone has their own specialness in different ways. And we're not here to try to make them fit in the mold. We're trying to find ways to make a world where people will be more comfortable being themselves and being neuroatypical. But it's not something that society and the structure we've created yet is very comfortable with. It's not very flexible. And that's one of the things that I dream of seeing more evolution in that department because the neuroatypical brains are beautiful. And what is even, when you think about it, everyone has a form of ATP in them, is just to welcome it and to allow yourself because there's also a lot of masking going on. And I know that I masked a lot growing up to fit in, and even the 9 to 5 to fit in that kind of world. I was uncomfortable because I couldn't really be myself. I had to be presentable, professional, whatever that means. Really, all it meant is I had to suppress certain parts of myself so that I would not make people uncomfortable with the way I thought or the way I communicated or my facial expressions, being aware that if I disconnect too much, it's going to make others uncomfortable. So that's another great thing about art. You can be however quote unquote weird as you want. People are just going to be like, she's an artist. It's fine.
I'm curious how much you felt like you had to put on because you are, I don't know, and you strike me as an extremely calming presence, like
Mm.
you have a very calming energy about. I'm sure I'm not the first person to tell you that.
I always appreciate it. I do feel calm and happy and grounded. So that is for sure something that I worked for, but I've always been of a calm nature. Um, and the funny part is that as calm as I can be, I feel like my brain is constantly working. So it's this parallel between the internal turmoil and the work that I've put in so that it can translate and calm myself first so I can
It's like
gather my
right
thoughts
right
and
below the
process.
surface of the water.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of emotion, a lot of things, and it's as if it's so much that just to process it myself, I need to work to remain in my center as much as possible so that I can function in this world that is just a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot of colors. It's a lot of lights, blue lights. How dare that should be illegal? It's a lot of sounds. It's a lot for sure.
You mentioned something earlier that jumped out at me, and it was in reference to this idea of, feeling like you shouldn't be congratulated because the music just appears in your head. Is that something you've had your entire life? Is that something you had to work towards? Is that something that required you to leave the 9 to 5 in order to really start to experience?
That's a great question. I think the music and arts in general has always been very present in my life. Before, it used to be more under painting because I associate music and colors, so I have synesthesia in that aspect. And even when I did my first trilogy, I painted them before making the music so that I could connect with the color I was trying to create musically and then make the music. So I feel like from the moment that I accepted that I was exiting the conventional world to a certain extent, or that I was going to kind of live on the margin of it because I didn't fit in anywhere that made sense to me or that allowed me to be well, and that I also reconnected with my deep beliefs. I always believed in energy because we can sense it, we can feel people, there's so many things we can feel that are not yet addressed by science, but have been for ages through spiritual practices, etc. And wanting to put both my feet in it and stand in it unapologetically, that allowed me to treat music as a meditative, spiritual process that it can be. And from that moment, everything just flowed. And that's why I never run out of ideas for music because there is no end to, that field of endless possibilities and that energy that lives around and with us that has so much to say and so much to share. And my theory is also that that's the reason why there's certain topics or certain um, directions that you will notice will pop at the same time in different artists. So how come we're all talking about the same thing? Yeah, society, for sure. It can bring similar thoughts. But then again, it feels like there's something more. There's some specific detail or things that show up in many people at once that keeps validating, at least for me, that idea that there is something bigger that we're connected to, and that music is definitely one of those ways to express that language and to translate that energy into something tangible to everyone.
Did that shift? No, I mean, I know that you're still making art, but did that shift from primarily being a graphic artist to somebody making music? Did that coincide with the changing of the job?
It did, because when I paint, there is a part where there's intuitive side, there's an intuition that comes with it, but it's as if there was more of my brain involved in
Mm.
tracing certain things, etc., and the placement of colors. Um, Music, there's something that is just so fluid in the way that it comes out that there's no time to think. It's as if even if I try to think, my brain couldn't catch up with it coming out. So it just comes. Um, Through repetition, I noticed that because I was also trying to make trilogies that were based on certain topics or certain emotions or intuitions I had, the brain did get involved at times. And now my new journey is trying to really work from a place where I intentionally ignore the brain and follow only the things that come from the flow, if we could call it like that, the state of flow. And that's what I did for the last album. Well, the new album that's coming out, that was the main goal. It was, I will only take songs that came without any kind of thought. And anytime that I would catch myself thinking or trying to intellectualize something, I threw the song in the garbage.
Did you lose some good songs that way?
What is a good song? Every song is good to me, you
Sure,
know?
but
It's
there are some songs that hit different, that hit better. There are some songs I'm sure that are more personal, or that jump out at you maybe a little bit more than others.
true. That's true. I think because I feel like the intention in the song matters as much as the result, if not more. To me, that became my new definition of also of what is a good song. A good song is when it's really tapping into something true and that vibrates as true. And it was not about overthinking, or even the last thing I would ever want to do is make a song because I think people are gonna like it. Because in my head, that means that I'm creating from an external place. Again, the notion of validation that to me does not belong in art, really, at least for me. So I threw away songs that perhaps people would have liked, but I don't know if they would have connected with it as deeply if I didn't bring it from a deeper place as well. So I think that matters, and that people might feel it more than they think. I feel it when someone is making a song from a place that really came from the deep down of their soul. Whether I like the aesthetics or not, there's something that just I feel like, oh, that came from somewhere, like, wow. And when, and I even had some artist friend tell me, like, oh, do you like this song? Well, I connect less with it personally, and what was your intention behind it, or what were you thinking about? Oh, I was thinking that it could be a good song if I wanted placement in this kind of show. There was a whole, I understand that's another way, and it might work as well, is just making art from a different place that resonates less with me.
It strikes me that uh, the trilogy thing, especially, it's almost in some senses kind of the polar opposite of what you're talking about, right? Because you have to think really far ahead. I mean, is this new way of thinking, and is this new way of approaching music, is this something that can work in tandem with this idea of putting together trilogies?
I wondered the same when I started doing trilogies, because the first trilogy happened because I wanted to explore musical styles that resonated with me growing up. Because I remember my manager basically saying, okay, now we're starting this journey. You have 6 months to think about what do you want to do. Do you want to do singles? Do you want to do an album? What do you want? And then I came back with, I don't want a single. I don't want an album. I want three. He's like, okay, explain why. And it was because when I look back, I thought about when did I vibrate with music the most? And it was
Mm.
my teenage years, discovering music and falling in love with it. And then I wondered, who am I? What's my style? What kind of music do I like? And I realized what I resonated with the most was blues, jazz, soul, R&B, all the Afro-American music that came from the last 100 years, let's say, and even more. And when I started thinking about that, I saw so clearly how they were linked to the colors. So the blue for the blues, the red for the jazz, and the yellow for the sun, and the wind of change, and the joy that came out. So they were all linked to time frames and to emotions. And I wanted to dive deeper into what it meant, how music will be the vessel for emotions throughout time. So you have history books for what happened when with who, but then you have music that captured how did people feel, how did they deal with stuff, their actual emotional universe. And that's something that fascinated me so much that it made sense to want to explore each of them and find myself in it. And I feel like the first trilogy was about me discovering and diving back into my passion for music and all the emotions that were linked, the heaviness, the sadness, the revolution through jazz, the freedom and the mindset of freedom in art. That's why I stayed stuck on jazz and I realized this is who I am. I want to be free. That's the message that you shared with me is create however you want. There is no book or no school that is going to tell you what to do. You make this however it feels right. And that's where I discovered kind of who I am musically in a way, or that I was able to relate to a process. And when I started the second trilogy, that's when I decided if I really want to remain in the flow, I can have the colors exist because I already know that I want to cover the spectrum of all the chakras because every color is also related to a chakra. So I want to be able to have an energetic starting point so that I can have some coherence in the message and the energy that I'm sharing. Because if there is no coherence, it's harder to really dive in the universe, even for me. And from that moment, I realized that I was not gonna decide in advance what each album was gonna talk about. I was gonna treat it more as a journal that would accompany me and allow me to share my evolution through music with people. So that would be the element that would create coherence because the goal was to make it as authentically me as I could and whatever thought or journey I was going through at the time that I write the album, this is what is going to be immortalized and shared with people.
So you found a cheat code, which
I
is
kind of
that
did.
it kind of defines itself, right? I mean,
It
it's just
does.
the act of making it is what defines the art.
Yeah. And it's like getting establishing a playground so that also because sky is the limit, there's millions of things, millions of directions, but I feel freer when I have some kind of structure and guideline established that I know what is the space I'm playing it. And when I have that space, now I can play as freely as I want in that space. So it's
Mm.
also about the cohabitation of the chaos, but also the OCD in me that does want a little structure because otherwise I'm just gonna, you know, get lost in my own head and get in my way really. I think the concept of trilogy also came from the fact at first that I wanted to dive deeper in the topic and give myself the time and room to create a lot because I love creating. But then when I realized it was also a way to revolt against this notion that you have to, because everyone kept saying, you can't do a trilogy, you have to do singles, you have to do short format. People don't listen to albums anymore, people don't buy physical. So it was a way of like, no, I refuse this. And if I
Mm.
don't agree with it, I don't have to do what the industry says or what people say they want. I think there will always be people who want to connect long term on a deeper level. And I also want the vinyl because I want people to remember the value of physical music for it to not just be some file on your computer that you don't give any value to because it feels unreal or just belonging to the digital world.
What I was wondering if is whether at a certain point the framework of trilogy continues to be useful as it gets a little bit more abstract and as it gets to a point when it can really be anything. Like what is the value in continuing to associate with that?
The continuation of colors to me matters a lot because it
Mm.
does really represent each an energetic starting point. Um, that I think that anyone who has those association between music and color will relate to. So really, when you think about it, everything I make it for me at first, and then whoever is welcome to listen to, and I'll be very happy for who connects with it. But to me, it felt right to have color associated with the chakra and with the there's always an element of nature in some kind of way that is linked to every album I make because one of my biggest inspiration is nature. And that also helps me connect with that energy. So connecting with that frequency color wise helps me generate the musical frequency that will come with it and the emotion that comes with it, and therefore the whole landscape of the album. And it's also a representation of me being work in progress and evolving in steps, and we're ever changing, ever evolving, transforming from color to color, from state of mind to state of mind. And different moments will make us connect more deeply with different energetic centers in us and different emotions. And I felt like the trilogy helped me convey that message as well.
I was reading an interview and I got the sense, and maybe this is, I think this gets back to this, what we were talking about before, about moving from being a purely visual artist into getting to a point when you felt comfortable making music, is that maybe there was a little bit of, I guess, what we would call imposter syndrome, in that you felt like the fact that your voice was your primary instrument, that didn't make you, that in and of itself didn't make you a musician, but it's this sort of liberation that got you there, right? It's the realization that there are really kind of like no rules, that allows you to really play around with it.
Absolutely. Jazz taught me that for sure. Also, realizing that a lot of jazz artists learned on their own. Therefore, we're not playing by the quote unquote rules that were established in the classical world or in the way the books were written. And remembering that art existed before schools and the whole academic process, and wanting to, I keep encouraging people to make art, and I've always done that. Like, I used to encourage people to paint at my house when I would paint, and they would say, "Oh, but I'm not good." I was like, "Yeah, that's not what I asked you. Ask you if you want to enjoy a moment with colors. That's a different thing. So we're not going to the museum to put your paintings up tomorrow. Just right now, I feel like you could have fun because as a kid, we just do it.
It's hard to get past that initial. It's hard when you feel like you're not good to get past that and to just purely enjoy the experience of doing that.
But as a kid, it's not. So what changes? What did society do to us where suddenly art becomes about performance, about result, about being legitimate or not? We're all artists. We can all make art. It's in it. As a kid, we just do it. And it's about bringing ourselves back to that state of mind where it's about the enjoyment of the moment. And that's another thing that is linked to meditation in a way where they would do those mandalas and then erase them because it was not about the result, no matter how beautiful it might be. Again, what is beautiful, what is not, that's another subjective thing, but the process feels so good and it's good for our brain, it's good for everything. So if I kept encouraging people to make art, how could I sit there and feel like an imposter? That felt contradictory. So I decided that the same kindness I was giving and the same encouragement I was giving others and telling them you are legitimate to make art because everyone is. It kind of sunk in that, well, that belongs to me too. I am legitimate to make art because art is for everyone, me included, and it's not about the result. If I do it from a place that feels right, it will bring whatever it will bring. And turns out that it brought people to connect with the music I make. And quite frankly, I don't have the most unbelievable voice. I don't have any technique. I don't play any instrument, but I have honest, sincere fun when I make music. And it comes from a place that just feels so good that I realize now that when you do that, it's kind of bound to feel good to somebody, even if it's one other person. There's millions of people out there. Somebody's going to connect.
I mean, I'm sure that this is a parallel that you've drawn before. And obviously you're recording albums, and those are saved for posterity, and you have produced a live record. But when you're about to embark on this long tour, um, you know, that's you're sort of getting closer to that impermanence. You're getting closer to that mandala of these live shows that just kind of exist in the moment and then go away.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that's quite wonderful because there's no two shows the same. especially because the musicians and I are very comfortable with each other now. So we allow some room to kind of deviate from what we worked on and then leave some space for improvisation, changing things around. And now we even throw the challenge once in a while before getting on stage. Okay, I want to hear everyone do something I've never heard before. And now everyone has that in mind for the show. So we're really going to remain connected and attentive to one another. And that creates a connection between us that is also welcoming the public to get in it with us. So there's a definite meditative aspect and connection aspect that comes with a live show that is different from being in the studio. Although I love the studio, I love the creative and creating part. Um, it's a different worlds completely for sure.
It's a gift that you're giving to the people there. Like, this is sort of like an exclusive. This is a limited edition that only you are getting by being there in person.
It is a limited edition. I like the way you see it for sure.
Yeah.
It's a one-time deal only.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're coming up on time, so we can close on this. But I'm going to ask you kind of like something big and abstract, and I want to get your take on this because I saw this word, in some of the interviews and some of the press materials, and used in different contexts, and I kind of want to know what it means to you. It means a lot of different things in a lot of different contexts. It means a lot of things in terms of art. Certainly it means a lot of things in terms of like specifically how people relate to jazz. But what does the word authenticity mean to you in the context of the music that you're making?
That's a big one indeed, a wide one for sure. I think for me at this point, I think it can change and evolve depending on where you're at in your journey. But for me, it has been a lot about welcoming who I am and allowing myself to be. Therefore, expressing my true thoughts, um, regardless of how it might be welcomed or how it might be perceived, accepting even being misunderstood. And that's something that used to be difficult for me that I'm still working on. Um, Never feeling like you have enough words to precisely say how you feel and what you think. This is one of the things I appreciate about music because it's another language that is so universal and so much deeper than words. It's as if the only way I can communicate properly is through frequencies and making them come from the most honest place I know or that I have access to as a human would be my version of authenticity.
I like that a lot. I think about that a lot in terms of when I'm doing interviews or when I'm writing, in that, you'll say something and there'll be, 5 different questions that I want to ask you. And, I can only ask one, and it's going to take me down a certain path. And you just have to, that's part of letting go, right? Is just sort of accepting that that's the path that you've taken, and then just sort of experiencing that journey.
Absolutely. There's a saying that says, choosing is renouncing. And it's about accepting the things that we are, renouncing, but focusing on what we have chosen and welcoming that as the gift instead of focusing on what we don't have for sure.
Come, let's heal together. Meet me by the river. Let's be alone.